Story one, the beach house that wasn't empty. I remember that trip like it was supposed to be one of the best weeks of my life. It was spring break, and there were five of us, all close friends, piling into a car with too much luggage and not enough space, driving toward a quiet beach town we had never been to before. Everything felt light, easy, almost unreal in that way freedom does when you're young and away from home. The house we rented was cheap, a little older than the photos made it look, but we didn't care. We had the ocean a short walk away, late nights ahead of us, and no real responsibilities for once. At least that's how it felt at the time. Looking back, there was something about that house that never really settled with me. I can't explain it clearly, not even now. It was just a feeling I ignored. What I didn't realize then, and what still bothers me, is that we weren't as alone in that house as we thought we were. There was one small detail from the first night that I brushed off. Something so minor it almost feels stupid to mention, but it mattered. Normal life and character building. I went with four friends who I had known since high school, so everything between us felt easy and familiar. There was Jake, loud and always trying to turn everything into a joke, even when it didn't land. Mia was the planner, the one who booked the house and kept track of money. Tyler barely spoke unless he had something worth saying, but when he did, we listened. And Sarah was the calm one, the kind of person who made everything feel a little more grounded. The town itself was quieter than we expected. It wasn't completely empty, but it felt like the season hadn't fully started yet. A few restaurants were open, and there were people around, but most of the houses nearby looked closed up. At night, the streets got almost too quiet, like the town went to sleep earlier than we did. The house sat a little back from the water, close enough that you could hear the waves if you opened a window. From the outside, it looked fine, just older. Inside, it felt slightly off, like it hadn't been updated in years. The floors creaked, some of the lights flickered, and then there was this faint smell we couldn't really place, like something damp that never fully dried. We didn't care. We dropped our bags, picked rooms, and immediately started treating the place like it was ours. Jake and Tyler took the living room couches. Mia and Sarah shared the bigger bedroom, and I ended up in a smaller room near the hallway. We did grocery runs that first afternoon, buying way too much food, cheap drinks, and random snacks we didn't need. Nights were music, talking, and sitting outside with the sound of the ocean in the background. It all felt exactly like what we had wanted. The layout of the house was simple. Front door opened into the living room, kitchen to the left, hallway leading to the bedrooms. At the very end of that hallway, there was one door that didn't match the others. It was heavier, older, and always locked. When we asked about it, the landlord had just shrugged and said it was storage, nothing important, and told us to ignore it. At the time, we laughed and moved on. It didn't seem like a big deal, but I remember glancing at that door more than once, especially at night when the hallway was dark and quiet. There was something about it that felt out of place, like it didn't belong in a rental house meant for vacation. Still, we were there to relax, to forget everything else for a few days, and none of us wanted to start overthinking things. So we left it alone, closed off in the background, like it didn't matter at all. Looking back, that was probably the first moment I should have paid closer attention, because it wasn't just a door, and it wasn't something we could ignore for long. At all. Early warning signs at first, none of it felt serious enough to question. It was the kind of stuff you explain away without even thinking. The first night, I woke up sometime after midnight to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. Slow, uneven, like someone walking without trying to be heard. I remember lying there for a few seconds, listening, trying to figure out who it was. Then I just assumed it was Jake or Tyler getting up for water or messing around, and I went back to sleep. The next morning, nothing seemed off. Everyone was normal, joking, making breakfast, acting like nothing had happened. So I didn't bring it up. Little things started adding up after that. Food we were sure we hadn't touched would be missing or moved. One time, Mia got annoyed because she said someone used the last of the milk, but no one admitted to it. It turned into a joke, like someone was secretly eating more than the rest of us. Then there was the bathroom. A couple of times, I walked in and the floor was slightly wet, like someone had just showered. The mirror would still be foggy, but when I asked, everyone swore they hadn't used it. I didn't think much of it at the time. It all felt small, explainable. But one night, Sarah mentioned she heard something downstairs around 3 in the morning. Not footsteps like before, but something heavier, like furniture shifting slightly. She said it casually, almost like she didn't want to make it a big deal. Everyone laughed it off. Jake even joked that the house was just settling. Still, after that, I started noticing the locked door more. Late at night, when everything was quiet, it sometimes sounded like there was a faint movement behind it. Not loud, just enough to make you stop and listen. I told myself it was nothing. We all did. Escalation phase, things didn't change all at once. It was gradual, just enough to keep us from fully reacting, but enough that it started getting under everyone's skin. One night, Tyler said he saw someone standing in the hallway. He didn't make a big scene about it, just mentioned it the next morning while we were sitting around eating. He said he woke up, looked toward the door, and saw a shape just standing there for a second, before it moved out of view. He assumed it was one of us, but when he checked, everyone was in their beds. Jake immediately laughed it off, said Tyler was half asleep and dreaming. Most of us agreed, but there was this brief moment where no one really spoke, like we were all thinking the same thing and didn't want to say it out loud. The small things kept happening. More food missing, things not where we left them. It stopped being funny. Mia got genuinely annoyed, saying someone needed to just admit it and stop acting weird. No one did. The back door became another issue. We would lock it at night, and somehow, in the morning, it would be slightly open. Not wide, just enough to notice. At first, we blamed each other again, but it kept happening, even on nights when we all checked it together before going to bed. I remember one night in particular, I was half asleep, just drifting in and out, when I heard voices. Not loud, not clear, just low whispering somewhere nearby. I stayed still, trying to figure out what they were saying, but I couldn't make out any words. After a few seconds, I convinced myself it was just Jake and Tyler talking in the living room and eventually drifted off. The next morning, I asked them about it. They both said they had gone to sleep early. That's when things started to feel different. People got quieter, more irritated. Little arguments over nothing. No one trusted anyone's answers anymore. And through all of it, that locked door stayed there at the end of the hallway. Always closed, always silent during the day. But at night, it felt like it was the center of everything. Peak event / major incident. That night, the power went out without warning. Everything just dropped into silence, like the house had stopped breathing. At first, I thought it was the area, maybe something outside. But then I realized how quiet it was. I grabbed my phone and went downstairs, using the flashlight. That was when I saw it. The locked door at the end of the hallway wasn't fully closed anymore. It was slightly open. I don't know why I moved toward it, but I did. Slowly, I pushed it open enough to look inside. There were blankets on the floor, crumpled like someone had been sleeping there. Food wrappers were scattered around, and a phone charger was plugged into the wall. I was still trying to process it when I heard something move behind me. Not from the room, from the hallway. I wasn't alone. Aftermath and emotional fallout, everything after that, blurred together faster than I expected. I remember calling the police, my hands shaking, trying to explain something that didn't even sound real out loud. They searched the house carefully, including that room, but they didn't find anyone. No signs of forced entry. Nothing conclusive. We left the next morning. No one argued. No one joked. And after that, none of us really talked about it again. Lingering ending, I still think about how long someone had been living there, quietly, hidden from us. And whether every moment we felt alone, we were actually being watched the entire time. Story 2. The party house with nitrogen monoxide signal. I didn't plan on going to that house at all. But it was spring break and everything felt spontaneous. One of the guys we met earlier that day mentioned a huge party just outside town. And before I really thought about it, we were already on our way there. The house was bigger than anything I expected. Lights spilling out of every window. Music loud enough to feel in your chest. People were everywhere, inside, outside, moving in and out, like it never stopped. It felt chaotic, but in that exciting way where you just let yourself get pulled into it. At first, nothing seemed off. Everyone was laughing, drinking, talking over each other. I stuck close to my friend, trying to take it all in without getting completely lost in it. The only thing I noticed, and even then I barely cared, was that my phone had no signal. No bars, no data, nothing at all. I remember checking it twice, maybe three times, then just shrugging it off. Looking back, that should have meant something. At the time, it didn't feel important enough to question. Not in a place like that, not with everything going on around. Once we got inside, it became clear pretty quickly that this wasn't just a small gathering. The house felt packed in a way that didn't make sense. Like there were more people inside than the space should have allowed. Every room had someone in it, conversations overlapping, music coming from different directions at once. I was there with one close friend, and we stayed near each other most of the time. It just felt easier that way, especially since we didn't really know one else. The rest were strangers, groups that had formed on their own, people who looked like they had been there for hours already. The layout of the house was confusing. Hallways didn't seem to lead where you expected, and some doors opened into rooms that felt disconnected from the rest of the place. There were stairs going up, but also a narrow set going down that most people seemed to ignore. It wasn't the house you could understand quickly, and I remember feeling turned around more than once. People kept moving in and out constantly, like there was no clear beginning or end to the night. Drinks were passed around without much thought. Music shifted from one room to another, and at times it felt like the whole place was just one continuous noise. I stayed close to my friend, checking in every few minutes without making it obvious. We laughed, talked, tried to act like we belonged there, even though something about it felt slightly off. It wasn't anything clear, just small things. The way some people watched instead of interacting. The way certain conversations stopped when you got too close. There was one guy in particular I noticed more than once. He wasn't doing anything obvious, just standing off to the side, but every time I looked up, he seemed to already be looking at me. I told myself I was overthinking it. Places like that are always a little strange when you don't know anyone. Still, I didn't move too far away from my friend after that. Early warning signs after a while, I checked my phone again without really thinking about it. Still nothing. No signal, no messages coming through, like the outside world had just dropped away. I remember mentioning it to my friend, half joking, and they said the same thing was happening to them. We both shrugged it off, but it stuck in the back of my mind more than I expected. Not long after that, I lost track of them for a few minutes. It wasn't unusual in a place that crowded, so I didn't panic, just moved through the rooms trying to spot them. When I finally found them again, something felt different. They were quieter, not really meeting my eyes, and when I asked where they'd been, they gave a vague answer that didn't really explain anything. I didn't push it. It didn't seem like a big deal at the time. As the night went on, I started noticing small things that didn't quite fit. A couple of doors I tried wouldn't open, like they were locked from the outside, which didn't make much sense. At one point, I saw a group being casually directed down a hallway by someone who didn't seem like a guest, more like they knew the house too well. That's when it started to feel less random. Like there was some kind of order to it, something underneath the noise and movement that we weren't part of. Escalation phase at some point, without really noticing when it happened, I lost my friend again. 1 second they were next to me, and the next I was standing alone in a room that suddenly felt too full of people I didn't know. I told myself it was nothing, that I'd find them like before, but this time it felt different. I moved through the house, checking the same rooms, then new ones, trying to retrace where we'd been. The layout didn't help. Hallways seemed to loop back in ways that didn't make sense, and doors that had been open earlier were now closed. I tried heading toward what I thought was the front, but I ended up somewhere completely unfamiliar. That's when I decided I just wanted to leave. I turned back, looking for any clear exit, but every direction felt wrong. People brushed past me without acknowledging me, conversations sounding louder and sharper than before. It wasn't just noise anymore. There was an edge to it. I asked someone where the exit was, and they pointed vaguely down a hallway without really looking at me. When I followed it, it didn't lead outside. Just another crowded room. The longer I stayed, the more the atmosphere shifted. People seemed less relaxed, more watchful. Movements felt intentional, like everyone knew something I didn't. I tried another door, but it didn't open. At one point, I must have looked visibly uncomfortable because someone stepped in front of me and said, almost too calmly, "Relax, you're fine." The way they said it didn't help. If anything, it made it worse. That was the moment it really sank in. This wasn't just a party. There was something wrong with the way everything was being controlled around me. Peak event slash major incident. I finally found my friend near the back of the house, standing against a wall like they were trying to stay out of the way. The second they saw me, something in their expression shifted. They looked relieved, but also unsettled, like they had been waiting. Up close, it was obvious something was wrong. They weren't acting like themselves, quieter than usual, eyes moving around the room instead of focusing on me. I asked if they were okay, and they just nodded too quickly. I didn't ask anything else. I just said we were leaving. We moved together, heading toward the hallway I thought might lead outside. But before we got far, a man stepped in front of us. He didn't touch us, didn't say anything aggressive. He just stood there, watching. For a few seconds, no one moved. Then he stepped aside. We didn't wait. We left immediately, not looking back until we were outside. Aftermath and emotional fallout, we didn't say much once we got outside. We just kept walking until the house was out of sight, like putting distance between us and it would somehow make everything feel normal again. We never went back, not even the next day. I tried asking my friend what happened when we got separated, but they shut it down immediately. After that, they avoided the topic completely. Lingering ending, even now, I still think about that house, about what was really happening inside, and how many people walked in like we did, but never found their way back out. Story 3. The drive that never felt safe. We weren't supposed to leave early. But by the third day, something about the trip just felt off. Not in a way I could explain at the time, just this quiet feeling that it was better to go home sooner than planned. My friend felt it too, even if neither of us said it directly. So we packed up late that night and started the drive back while most people were still out or asleep. The roads were almost empty. It was one of those long, quiet highways where the only sound is the engine and the occasional passing car. The further we got from the beach, the darker everything became, like the world was slowly thinning out around us. At first, it felt calm, peaceful even. We had snacks, low music playing, and that tired, heavy silence that comes after a long day. But looking back, there was something about that drive from the very beginning that didn't sit right with me. I noticed it early on, just small things that didn't quite make sense. I ignored them. I told myself I was just tired, that it was nothing. Normal life and character building I was driving, and my friend sat in the passenger seat, feet tucked up against the dash the way they always did on long trips. We had known each other for years, long enough that silence between us didn't feel awkward. It was the kind of friendship where you didn't need to fill every moment with conversation to feel comfortable. We never really said why we decided to leave early. There wasn't one clear reason. The trip just didn't feel the way we expected it to. The house, the people, even the town itself had this strange undertone that neither of us could explain, but we both felt it enough to act on it. So instead of waiting it out, we packed our things quietly and left without making a big deal about it. The drive started off normal. We stopped at a gas station not too far outside town, grabbing drinks and snacks we didn't really need. The place was almost empty. Just one other car at the pump and a cashier who barely looked up. It felt routine, like any other late night stop. Back on the road, we kept things simple. Music low, conversations drifting in and out. We talked about random things, stuff that didn't matter, like plans for the next week or things we wanted to do once we got home. Every now and then, one of us would go quiet for a bit, just staring out at the road ahead. It felt calm, comfortable, like we had already put the trip behind us. But every now and then, I'd catch myself glancing at the rearview mirror without really knowing why, like part of me was still paying attention to something I couldn't fully explain yet. Early warning signs, it started as something so small I almost didn't register it. A pair of headlights sitting a few cars behind us, steady, keeping the same distance no matter how the road curved. At first, it didn't mean anything. It was a highway after all. Cars come and go. But after a while, I realized it wasn't coming or going. It was just there. I didn't say anything right away. I just kept driving, occasionally checking the mirror, telling myself I was imagining it. My friend noticed me looking back a few times and joked about it, asking if I thought we were being followed. We both laughed, and I let it go. For a bit, the car disappeared. Either it turned off or slowed down enough that I couldn't see it anymore. That should have been the end of it. But maybe 10 minutes later, it was back. Same distance, same headlights. That's when it started to feel off. I still didn't want to make it a big deal. There were plenty of normal explanations. Maybe it was just someone heading in the same direction for a long stretch. Still, I found myself checking more often, paying closer attention without meaning to. Something about it didn't sit right. And even though I couldn't explain why, I couldn't quite ignore it anymore. Escalation phase at some point, it stopped feeling like a coincidence. The car behind us didn't just stay there, it adjusted. When I slowed down slightly, it slowed too. When I sped up, it didn't rush to catch us, but it never let the distance grow. It was controlled, deliberate in a way that made it hard to ignore. I mentioned it this time, trying to keep my voice casual. My friend turned around to look, squinting through the back window, then said it was probably nothing. Just someone on the same route. I wanted to believe that. But then we pulled into another gas station. It was even quieter than the first one, just a dimly lit building and empty pumps. I parked, and for a moment, everything felt still again, normal. Then the car turned in behind us. It didn't pull up to a pump. It didn't park near the entrance. It just stopped, a few spaces back, engine still running. Neither of us got out right away. I remember sitting there, keys still in the ignition, watching it through the mirror. The headlights stayed on, bright enough to make it hard to see anything inside. After a few seconds, I forced myself to move. We went inside quickly, grabbed what we needed, and came back out. The car hadn't moved. That was when the tension really set in. Back on the road, it followed again. Same distance. Same pace. At one point, the headlights flashed briefly, once then again, like it was trying to get our attention. My chest tightened in a way I couldn't explain. It didn't feel random anymore. It felt like we were being watched. Like we had been chosen for something I didn't understand yet. Peak event, major incident, the next time we stopped. It wasn't planned. I just didn't feel comfortable staying on the road without a break, like I needed to reset for a second. The gas station was small, barely lit, and completely empty when we pulled in. I parked near the entrance, engine still running. A few seconds later, the car turned in behind us. It didn't hesitate. It didn't circle around. It just pulled in and stopped directly facing us. The engine stayed on. The headlights stayed on. But the driver didn't get out. They just sat there. I couldn't see their face, only a dark shape behind the glass, completely still. Not moving, not looking away. Watching. I felt it more than I understood it. I didn't say anything. I just shifted the car back into drive. And we left immediately. Aftermath and emotional fallout after we pulled out. I didn't stay on that road. I took the first turn I saw, then another, not really thinking about where they led, just trying to get away. My friend kept looking back, checking if the car was still there, but after a few turns, the headlights disappeared. We didn't say anything for a while. Even after we were sure we lost it, the feeling didn't go away. Every passing car made me tense. Every light in the mirror felt wrong. We eventually made it home, but something about that drive stayed with me. I still don't feel comfortable on empty roads at night. Lingering. Ending. We never found out who was behind us that night. No explanation ever came. No reason that made sense of it afterward. It just stayed as one of those things you try not to think about too much. But it changed something for me. Even now, I avoid driving late if I can help it. If I have to, I stay on well-lit roads around other cars, anywhere that doesn't feel empty or isolated. And every time I check my mirror and see headlights sitting just a little too steady behind me, I feel that same tension come back. Like I'm still on that road, still being followed.